Chapter 183, Blood Sea Ancestor, Translator, Sky Pharaoh, Editor, Sky Pharaoh. Wait a second, red soil? Fang Yuan's mind jolted at the sight. He stretched his hand out and grabbed the wall beside him, taking out a lump of red soil. This red soil was very soft and emitted a faint red light. Fang Yuan merely pressed it lightly, but it crumbled down. So it was like this. He seemed to have come to a realization. The first time he had entered the secret cave inside the rock crack, he saw that the secret cave was full of this red soil, which emitted faint glow. There was no need for any other lighting source. He had felt it weird at the time because Qingmao Mountain's soil was blue-black in color. He had thought this was arranged by the flower wine monk, but now it seemed that the source was this strange blood lake. Fang Yuan felt even more wary. His 500 years of experience had almost become an intuition. This place is not only strange, but also dangerous. I don't have the time to dilly-dally. I need to think of how to leave here. Fang Yuan raised his head and looked at the cave walls, where hundreds of holes were in the top part of the wall. Which was the one connected to the spirit spring? Fang Yuan hesitated for a moment. Water could flow down here, but it didn't mean that the passages were wide enough for a human to pass through. And Fang Yuan looked grave as he tried shaking his two wings. However, he couldn't control these thunder wings perfectly like before, and the originally clear blue thunder was now stained with some scarlet. It gave off a contradictory feeling of power and weakness existing at the same time. The thunder wings. Gu had become unreliable. It was very possible for it to screw up and drop Fang Yuan in the middle of flight. Swoosh! An inexplicable undercurrent surged up from within the blood lake, giving off the enormous aura of rank 5 Go. That is, Fang Yuan's pupils shrunk. A long shadow gradually appeared in the blood lake. Its length surpassed 40 meters and its width over 6 meters. This was an enormous python. It dwelled in the depths of the blood lake. But now that it had smelled out the scent of flesh on Fang Yuan, it came out to begin the hunt. Damn it! Fang Yuan felt a pressing urge in his heart. Right now, he was relying on the chainsaw golden centipede to puncture the wall, barely managing to hang onto the soft red soil. And with his long hair and black gown, he looked like a black ant compared to the enormous blood lake. Hundreds of black dots appeared in the blood lake and rose up, just like a traveling shoal of fish. Whoosh! They were much faster than the giant python and flew out of the blood lake within moments, revealing their appearance. These were not fish, but bats. These blood-colored bats had two long pointed ears with two pairs of wings. The main pair of wings were rather big, whereas the secondary pair of wings was on the smaller side and was below the main wings. They didn't have claws, but the edges of the two pairs of wings were as sharp as steel blades. Rank 3 Blade Wing Blood Bat Gu. A name immediately appeared in Fang Yuan's mind. These Blade Wing Blood Bat groups were directing their intense murderous aura towards him. But the first thing that appeared in his mind was that image. In the image from the photo audio Gu, the flower wine monk's whole body was covered with blood, with severe injuries to the point of being near death. Moon Shadow Gu was not able to cause such injuries, but these Blade Wing Blood Bats were a different matter. Could it be that the flower wine monk had come to this place and was injured by these Blade Wing Blood Bats? Fang Yuan's thoughts revolved rapidly. Flower wine monk's death had been shrouded in riddles. Now it appeared extremely likely that it was due to this place. Blade Wing Blood Bat, Fang Yuan murmured. In fact, this Gu wasn't a stranger to him. Even though this Gu was a rank 3 Gu, it was very easy to feed, its food being blood. In his previous life, he had established the Blood Wing Devil Sect, and the symbol of the sect was precisely the Blade Wing Blood Bat. The resources from the Devil Sect were more than enough to support close to 10,000 Blade Wing Blood Bat Gu, allowing the sect to establish a terrifying might and spread terror. More precisely, he owed his success to Blade Wing Blood Bats. After over 400 years in his previous life, he had accidentally obtained an inheritance from the Blood Sea Ancestor. With the colonies of Blade Wing Blood Bats and his own rank 5 cultivation, he became an overlord of a region. This Blood Sea Ancestor was a rank 7 demonic path goo master who took lives as easily as cutting grass, and his evil reputation was such that it resounded throughout the world, having his name recorded in history. At the beginning, he was just a mortal, but through luck and destiny, he became a goo master of demonic path. He started out from the lowest of levels and rose up in ranks, before becoming an authority of demonic path after 800 years. He didn't have high aptitude, thus he had limited primeval essence in his aperture. Therefore, he had a crazed interest towards researching the fusion of goo worms. Wild goo worms possessed their own will and could absorb the natural primeval essence in the air by themselves. However, after a goo worm was refined by a goo master, its willpower would be dominated by the goo master, and it would lose the ability to absorb the surrounding primeval essence. It would be able to only absorb the primeval essence in the goo master's aperture. Blood Sea Ancestor had invested a lot of efforts in researching goo, which could absorb natural primeval essence even after being refined by a goo master. The righteous goo masters were very afraid of this. They were extremely worried that the Blood Sea Ancestor would succeed in his research. As a result, they organized countless traps before moving in for the kill. In the end, Blood Sea Ancestor wasn't able to succeed, but it also wasn't a complete failure. He succeeded in producing the fusion recipes of Bladewing Bloodbat, Blood Guillotine, and Blood Frenzy Q. Rank 3, Bladewing Bloodbat Goo was his first accomplishment. It was very easy to feed, but it still needed the goo master to provide primeval essence. The colony of Bladewing Bloodbats was very special. A goo master just needed to control a male bat, and they could indirectly command all the other female bats. Blood Frenzy. Goo was his second accomplishment. This goo was formless. As a ball of blood essence, it survived by attaching itself to other beings. It was a rank 4 goo and had a very unusual ability. Every goo worm infected by its aura could absorb natural primeval essence every now and then. But it had a great disadvantage. The goo worms affected by the blood frenzy, goo would gradually leave the control of the goo master and would turn into a pool of blood after a period of time. Blood Guillotine was the Blood Sea Ancestor's last accomplishment. This goo was a rank 5 goo and was no doubt more advanced than the previous two. Its usability and feeding were fused into one. Using wars to sustain itself, it multiplied by swallowing goo master's blood. It didn't need the goo master to provide it with any primeval essence. Unfortunately, after the Blood Sea Ancestor created the Blood Guillotine, due to the many battles and the entrapment by the righteous path, he was defeated. He suffered from fatal wounds that could not be healed, and he carved out a bloody escape from the layers of entrapment. The righteous path figures were worried about his final counterattack, which could endanger themselves, so they didn't have any inclination to chase after him and looked on as he made his getaway. Since then, these righteous path figures would regret the moment every time they recalled it. They regretted that they let him get away. The Blood Sea Ancestor knew his death was a sure thing, so he started setting up a large-scale inheritance. In the limited time before his death, with the strength of his rank 7 cultivation, he unexpectedly set up hundreds of thousands of inheritance grounds. His inheritances extended everywhere from the Middle Continent to the southern border and other places. Right before his death, he smiled devilishly. The blood path is not alone. The legacy will continue for all eternity. This statement was not in the least false, for countless goo masters benefited from his inheritances, and thus the demonic path flourished greatly. Oh, no matter the Bladewing Blood Bat Goo, the Blood Frenzy Goo, or the Blood Guillotine, they were all very easy to raise and multiply. Maybe in some unremarkable valleys, at poor villages, at no-man deserts, or beside some mountain paths, you might find 2 or 3 goo left casually by the Blood Sea Ancestor. 2. These goo were easy to raise and didn't have a high demand for primeval essence. Thus, they could easily be used by goo masters with ordinary aptitudes. Survival was a difficult thing in this world, so which goo master wouldn't thirst for stronger powers? The goo worms left by the Blood Sea Ancestor represented a whole new strength. This strength was a quick and easy way to rise in power, and it became more welcome than other goo worms. Power itself had no sins. It became good in the hands of good and evil in the hands of evil. But in the world, how many people could have a resolute mind after a sudden increase in strength? A man who got money would often become fickle. A sudden rise in strength would certainly nourish ambitions that weren't there before. As a result, many Gu masters that obtained the Blood Sea Ancestor's legacy would become a devil that massacred everything. Even many righteous path figures had changed their sides. The inheritances of Blood Gu brought great turmoil and danger towards the whole world. In each inheritance of the Blood Sea Ancestor, there were often only 2 to 3 Gu. However, these inheritances were like a spark of fire that could cause a prairie fire if left alone. Or there would be demonic path Gu masters who would come into possession of the blood Gu every so often and cause chaos. Some of them would fail, killed away in some villages. Some would succeed temporarily and become a huge figure, harming a whole region. There would be demonic path Gu masters who would come into possession of the blood Gu every so often and cause chaos. Some of them would fail, killed away in some villages. Some would succeed temporarily and become a huge figure, harming a whole region. No matter if they succeeded temporarily or failed at the moment of their exhaustion, they would also leave behind new blood inheritances. Thus, the blood calamity continued endlessly. Not only did it not end with the death of the Blood Sea Ancestor through the combined strength of the righteous path, it instead thrived even more greatly with the foundations left behind, unable to be eliminated as it continued for eternity. It was to the extent that the righteous path figures would frequently curse, "These accursed blood Gu masters, we have already killed waves upon waves of them. But if we become even a bit careless, we will see a new one coming up from nowhere." By now, the Blood Sea inheritances were already publicly recognized as the most popular in the whole world, with the greatest number of inheritances. There was no competition. In the strictest sense, Fang Yuan had received a favor from the Blood Sea Ancestor. In my previous life, only after over 400 years, I found a Blood Sea inheritance and was then able to begin my rule. Now, if I can subdue these blood bats, it will be like completing 400 years of effort. Blood bats charged at him, but Fang Yuan was not afraid. He had the spring-autumn cicada, so these bats would submit without question in front of the rank 6 aura. The only problem was the rank 5 blood python that was still concealed, hiding within the blood lake. But this situation is somewhat fishy. The Blood Sea Ancestors' inheritances normally only have 2-3 Gu worms. How come this place has hundreds of blade-winged blood bats? Could it be that rumor is true? The rumor said that the Blood Sea Ancestors' hundreds of thousands of inheritances were diversions, and the true inheritances were only a few. In these few inheritances, the Blood Sea Ancestor was said to have concealed his best Gu worms, or research insights or fusion recipes. Could this place be a true inheritance ground of the Blood Sea Ancestor? When Fang Yuan thought of this, his heart started to beat loudly. His thoughts moved like lightning, and although he thought of many things, only a little time had passed in reality. Blade-winged blood bats charged at him one after another. Fang Yuan was calm, his long hair and black gown fluttering in the air as he climbed up the wall and was going to summon spring-autumn cicada. But right at this time, there was a sudden change. As expected, this place is hiding the blood calamity. A deep and firm voice, loud like the clash between iron and stone, came from the top of the cave and echoed within the blood lake. "Divine Investigator Ti Shuiling,